Okay. Ready. We're live.
We take you to a showdown between a self-proclaimed white nationalist and hundreds of protesters. Richard Spencer, founder of the so-called alt-right movement, which has gained national attention in recent months, became infamous when video went viral of his supporters hailing Trump with Nazi salutes. When he accepted an invitation to speak on a college campus, the community stood against him. Emotions bubbling over at Texas A&M, with the university becoming an ideological battleground. Last night, thousands came together to protest one man.
White people are ruling right now. White people have tremendous amount of power.
Richard Spencer, the man who coined the term alt-right, who critics are now calling a suit and tie racist.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
Last month, this video of Spencer at a so-called alt-right conference exulting in Trump's win, going viral after some in attendance went as far as throwing the deeply disturbing Nazi salute, propelling him into the national spotlight.
A white country designed for ourselves and our posterity.
His movement, he says, boosted by Trump's victory.
You went from totally obscurity, basically, to suddenly all this notoriety.
I think Donald Trump slingshotted our movement into fame.
We traveled to Texas to examine the roots of the new generation of racial extremism, meeting up with the 38-year-old just before his next event.
You gave a speech, went viral on the Atlantic. At the end, you said, "Hail Trump, hail victory." You laughed. Why?
Yeah, because that was said in a spirit of irony and exuberance.
What is exuberant about genocide? What is fun about mass murder?
I said, "Hail Trump," but I held up a glass of whiskey. There's some people, a half dozen people in the audience or so, who gave a Roman salute.
It's not a Roman salute. You know that. It is a Nazi party salute. Are you trying to normalize racism?
Yes, I'm trying to normalize racism, as you call it. Absolutely, I'm trying to normalize my ideas, our ideas of the alt-right. Yes, I do not want the alt-right to be a fringe movement. I want the alt-right to be a dominant movement.
He claims he's not a white supremacist or a racist, but it is difficult to understand his inflammatory rhetoric in another way.
You told Mother Jones that Hispanics and African Americans have lower average IQs than whites and are more genetically predisposed to commit crimes.
Yes.
That is a classic tenet of white supremacy.
It's also an empirical fact. The fact is
that they're genetically predisposed? That is not a fact.
When you study, say, average intelligence around the world, and you keep getting the same answer, at some point you're going to have to look towards genetics as a cause.
What do your parents think of your ideas?
They think I'm a big crazy.
They do.
I mean,
it's actually strained your relationship, according to you.
A lot of things have been strained because of my activism. Yes, it's been very difficult.
Businesses in Montana have banned you. Restaurants
Sure.
have said you can't come.
Sure, I've been banned from most of Europe.
Texas A&M denounced his views, but decided not to ban him, citing free speech. He was invited by a former student hoping to spread his incendiary views. His presence today, not without considerable controversy.
Go home, Spencer. We don't want you. That's what he's saying.
I'm here. I think that's
Do you
good.
feel like a pariah, though? Do you feel like a skunk at the garden party?
A skunk at the garden party? No.
What kind of things were you shouting?
I want people to not to see through their lies and their misguidance. They are not alt-right. They are not racial realists. They are neo-Nazis.
Look, they're just like they're gutter punks. I mean, it's just they're not good people. Let's be honest. Hey, could I borrow a marker?
Yes.
Thanks.
With our cameras rolling, Spencer further defies his detractors. Writing on a wall, the students set up to voice messages against him.
We trigger the world.
You enjoy being a provocateur.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
Spencer and his supporters feel emboldened by a political landscape he never dreamed of.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What was your reaction the moment you knew that Trump won the presidency?
It was a kind of miracle. If someone told me 2 years ago that Donald Trump would be the alt-right hero and he would be president, I would be like, what, ridiculous movie are you talking about? Like, this is not real life, but it is real life.
Although the president-elect publicly distanced himself from the
All right, everyone, just a little bit of context. Welcome to our first installment in a three-part series on white right terrorism, what it is we need to know now, with our wonderful comrade and friend, Professor James Simmons from California State University, Northridge, and Around Your Yard, helping Black people get free since way back, right, for decades. And so, welcome to Joko Collective. We start with greetings, Brother Kwame. Good to see you.
Keisha, how you doing?
Good, good.
We have a new Joko member. He's
Yeah,
1 month old today.
wonderful.
Matul Shakur, say hi.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. All the blessings. And with that, we're saluting that ancestor coming through. We also acknowledge the First Nations people who continue to fight to regain sovereignty, to expand their sovereignty and reassert their power and spread their power base. We do this work as African descended people on the unceded lands of Tongva and Chumash peoples of the now named Los Angeles Basin. And so we do not forget whose first hospitality we depend upon. If you are not speaking, please keep your mic muted. If you are not a panelist, please have your video off, but we're fast and loose with that because we're having a conversation here. So if you are seen on screen, that is fine. And you may want to select speaker view, anybody logging in to see panelists on your screen. Use chat or the raise hand icon for questions. And our little panelist message is left here. Of course, we don't have a panel today as such, but we will have time to open for discussion and question and answer. Looking, of course, at white right terrorism in the US, historical background, and the existential realities. The election of Donald Trump was said to embolden the militant fringe, quote unquote, of white nationalists in the US. The so-called alt-right emerged with its leaders, rank and file, grabbing screen time to warn of the coming civil war and present their argument for establishing an ethno-state. Elected legislators and mainstream media pundits reference versions of a great replacement narrative in which non-white immigrant hordes conspire with Jewish elites to replace whites from their rightful position of political and cultural hegemony. All this saw a dramatic culmination when a coalition of some of these groups staged an armed attack on the US Capitol last year, with some as of yet unspecified degree of collusion with government officials and members of Capitol law enforcement agencies. There was a bit of nail biting to be heard among pundits when these same folks issued threats of reprisals if the midterm election results were unsatisfactory. What we need to understand now is that these ideas, the ideologies that they inhabit, and the varied organizations that represent them are not fragile, fringe, inconsequential, or kooky. They are part of America's essential white supremacist subculture, described by the FBI as this nation's foremost domestic terror threat. They are part of a robust international community of white supremacists that have been reestablishing themselves in mainstream Western political life for decades. And of course, we are welcoming our brother James Simmons, as we said at the top of the program, and we look forward today in getting our conversation on the topic started with the historical context. We're going to dig into the establishment of the terror and terrorized relationship with slave catchers and slavers. We'll look at the creation of the first and the formative white supremacist terrorizing organizations during Reconstruction. We're going to take a look at what white supremacist terror and what our responses to it look like in the post-Reconstruction era. Okay, and all that being said, I'm handing it over to good brother Yusuf to continue the conversation. Take us on into this roundtable and this conversation.
Well, really, I think what we really should do is get right to James. And I know, James, in preparing for this, you sent us a glossary. And that glossary includes terms like assassination, counterterrorism, kidnapping, lynching, massacre, riots, terrorism, and torture. You did it alphabetically. Before we get into this history, do you want to, comment on that glossary? Why are those the important terms to understand for these conversations? You're muted still, James.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, well, this is America, and America doesn't like to shoot straight. America doesn't like to talk about those terrible things, So the movement against critical race theory, so the movement against ethnic studies, the language is very important, and things, acts of terrorism and the like are downplayed. We talk about killings, like the killing of 3 civil rights workers, or they might even say murder, the murder of certain people, when in almost any other context, they are assassinations. So, we have an elite few who were so-called assassinated. But when we talk about the murder of James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, they were murdered. Well, they were assassinated. And, assassination has a particular definition in terms of there's a political reason. It's to make a point to other people. There have been different definitions throughout the ages, but that's primarily it. This was not just some random murder.
Mm-hmm.
This was not because, and it wasn't a lynching. It was an assassination.
Mm-hmm.
The murder was the murders of these 3 were political assassinations.
Mm-hmm.
To give it, I think, the proper weight. When we talk about assassination, it carries more. Like, I think it was Chris Rock, and he said Biggie and Tupac, they said they were assassinated. He said, no, they were just murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Assassination implies weight.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, civil rights workers, Medgar Evers was assassinated. Malcolm X was assassinated. The 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi were assassinated. When Fannie Lou Hamer, counterterrorism, often, one of my students, I invited my class to go to events of Sekou Odinga, who was in town last month. And I said he was part of an alleged terrorist organization. So one of my students took offense to that and said, "What do you mean so-called, what is so-called?" I say, well, this organization that he belonged to, Black Liberation Army, did not attack civilians. And pretty much the definition of a terrorist organization is they attack civilian targets.
Right.
Black Liberation Army didn't attack civilian targets. And when we talk about the response to terrorism, we don't say that they were terrorists in reverse or something. No, they are countering terrorism. And sometimes counterterrorism is referred to by the state, and others, they'll attack civilians and they'll call it counterterrorism. So I think that we need to be clear when we use these terms what they really mean. And if someone else uses the term counterterrorism, we should, investigate and interrogate what exactly that means. Kidnapping, of course, the plain view. Emmett Till was kidnapped. But so was Fannie Lou Hamer. When the police pulled her off of a bus, she was identified as someone who was involved in civil rights work. That was not just an arrest, it was kidnapping. It was kidnapping. When we talk about lynching is, there's again, a wide view of what lynching means. But lynching, according to the Tuskegee Institute, if my memory serves correct, is, and there have been so many different definitions, but the one that sticks out in my mind is a murder by, I believe, 2 or more or 3 or more persons for the purpose of enforcing certain social codes, an extra legal execution. And lynching just doesn't mean hanging by a rope. There have been lynchings where people are slow roasted, chopped into pieces, in tortures before lynchings. People's body parts are cut and sometimes fed to the victim. It is not just as simple as hanging someone with a rope, although the rope is a potent symbol to represent lynching. And remember they used to say this was post-racial America with the election of Barack Obama. Well, they had to stop construction of the Obama Presidential Center this week because they found a rope at the construction site. It's not just a symbol of executing prisoners. It's not just lynching. It is a symbol of terrorism, just as a burning cross is. Even though the Ku Klux Klan would argue a burning cross is a symbol of the purifying power of Christ. It is a symbol of terrorism, and it's well understood to be that, just as a rope noose is. We talk of massacres, and massacres are also terrorism, as is lynching, as is kidnapping, as is assassination. Massacres, it's not just mass murder, it's not just a mass shooting, it's a massacre when you kill people in mass. When you kill people in mass, that's a massacre. And there, our history is littered with massacres, massacres of regular people, massacres of political activists and civil rights activists. So to talk about massacres, it's not just mass murder. Again, this is another tool of the terrorist. Riots. Now, when we think of riots, most times we think of Black folks. When riots used to say race riot, it was generally a bunch of white folks invading a Black part of town and murdering, burning, massacring Black folks. Right. So again, trying to remove this image of riots as solely the domain of Black folks. It's rooted in, or the historical roots are white folks would riot when Black folks went to the beach, when Black folks did well in business, when there was some so-called offense against a white woman, or an attack on white supremacy of any kind. The draft riots in the North, when whites rioted and killed Black people because they didn't want to fight to either preserve the Union or free Black folks. I'm going to skip over to torture. A lot of times people are beat up. Emmett Till was not just beat, he was tortured. He was tortured for hours. There was during lynchings, again, they would sometimes hold the person the day before the lynching. They would advertise Negro to be lynched at the fairgrounds next tomorrow. And between the time that this victim was captured to the time they were killed, they would snip off toes, they would snip off fingers, they would cut the genitals. Again, sometimes they were forced to eat their own genitals. So they were stabbed, they were cut. Again, strapped to a post and slow roasted, so their feet are burned to a crisp and carbonized, and they're still living. This is torture. It's not just that. Rodney King was not just beat, he was tortured. Fannie Lou Hamer, when she was in jail, and they forced two Black prisoners to beat her. One held her down, one beat her till he got tired, then they switched places. That was not just a beating, that was torture. That was torture. Again, part of terrorism. This is why a lot of Black folks to this day don't talk to me about Mississippi, because Mississippi has such a history of assassination, kidnapping, lynching, massacre, riots, and torture. And all of this goes under terrorism. And again, terrorism is normally defined as trying to, and even in the law, trying to affect or impose social certain behaviors or change by way of violence, and normally upon civilian populations. So if they're and not using the U.S. code as to define terrorism, but this is what they say. And their position is terrorists, of course, are dangerous to civilian populations. So and then trying to compare, say, the Black Panther Party or the Nation of Islam or the Black Liberation Army with the Ku Klux Klan, they weren't targeting civilian populations. If anything, the vast majority of violence is self-defense. And self-defense is not terrorism. If anything, it's counterterrorism. So when Robert F. Williams was shooting back at the Klan, that was counterterrorism. The Klan rides through, again, to terrorize people, and they get shot out. That is not terrorism, that's counterterrorism. But terrorism is threatening civilian populations. Again, we talk about the Black Liberation Army assassinating police officers. Yes, they did engage in assassinating police officers. But the Black Liberation Army and Black folks in general view the police as a military presence in the community that most often, historically, even present day, get away with murder. And prison guards, same thing. Chokwe Lumumba, the great Chokwe Lumumba, used to call them soldier cops. It's like there's a difference. There's a fundamental difference between attacking the home of a civil rights worker who's trying to get rights that are supposed to be guaranteed by the Constitution and the law, and attacking someone who is part of a force that consistently, like who sits on the neck, no matter what some celebrities say, sit on the knee on the neck of someone until they're dead, a slow, painful, tortuous death. So yeah, the glossary, these definitions, very important, I believe, when we talk about it. I also had a video. I was trying to cut it down. I have it. It's pretty long, but if you don't mind, I would like to show at least some of it. Is that okay?
Let's go for it.
Okay, let me see if it can work now.
Tasha, you'll have to stop. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so this video starts with now we know terrorism existed. Oh, and let me, because I wanted to actually show this first and talk about the progression of terrorism. I didn't have that much prepared, but on the terrorism of slavery, but I did want to remark at least on the fundamental difference between the terrorism that occurred during slavery, during the time of enslavement, and that afterwards, the Reconstruction and further on. During the time of slavery, people say, oh, we were lynched during slavery. No, we weren't. Black people were not lynched so much during slavery. Why? Because Black people's bodies had value. Black lives mattered to the slave master because that was a financial investment. They were property, and you don't want people destroying your property. And they would safeguard their property, even if it was to sell them to some other plantation because they ran away or committed some offense. Lynchings like those that occurred after the enslavement didn't so much exist. Now, if there was an uprising, yes, then they would murder folks. Sometimes they would murder people and commit massacres, like after the Nat Turner Rebellion. They killed lots of Black folks. So those massacres were in response to the rebellion. It wasn't just, well, let's go kill a Black person because we don't like Black people. It was a response, an illegitimate, illegal, immoral response, but it wasn't the same type of murder that occurred after enslavement ended. But let me just, I just want to play some of this. Let me see if I can share the screen. Okay, so okay, trying to make this a, well, I'll start it and then try to enlarge it.
You have to share your computer sound. It's silent for the rest of us.
Okay.
Activists who were members of the Communist Workers' Party. 10 other activists were injured. No one was convicted.
Yeah, I was trying to make a file, but apparently it did not work. Well,
This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. Hundreds gathered this weekend to mark the
I'll
40th
just
anniversary of the
try to,
Greensboro massacre, when
narrate
40
some of
Ku
the
Klux
stuff and then we can
Klansmen and
skip
American
ahead.
Nazis opened fire on an
This
anti-Klan
first clip is
demonstration
from
in
the
Greensboro, North
1979
Carolina.
November
Over the
1979
span of
massacre
88 seconds, the Klan and Nazis
anti-Klan
shot dead
demonstrators from
5
the Communist Workers'
anti-racist
Party.
activists who were members of the
a
Communist Workers'
caravan
Party.
of
10 other
Ku
activists
Klux
were
Klan
injured.
and
No one
Nazis.
was convicted in the
And I
massacre,
really
but a
wanna
jury
kind
did
of
find the
talk about this
Greensboro
Nazi thing.
police liable for cooperating
there was
with the
a death to the
KKK in
Klan,
a wrongful death. This is a clip
march.
from the documentary The
The
Guns
police
of November
gave
3rd
the
by
James,
Jim
can you hold
Waters,
on a second?
a news camera
Hold on just a
person
second,
who was on the
because
scene and filmed that.
Hearing her voice and your voice at the same time is, I can't.
Oh,
really-
you can hear her voice?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't hear it. Okay, well, let me just go ahead and shut up.
Day. A warning to our television viewers, some of this is graphic.
We can take our country back from the Communist Party. We can take it back from the niggers. It's time for us to band together. If we have to get in the streets and fight and blood. Up to our knees, by God, it's time to get ready to fight. Give them what they want. Fight for this country.
Plan and the state got together and planned this. That's why they were not so cocky. Do you hear me? The state protects the Klan, and this makes it clear. They came through and they opened fire. They opened fire on us. And we fired back to protect ourselves.
The Klan, or whoever it was, jumped out and just started shooting in the direction of the thickest concentration of people. They seemed to be aiming at particular people. There were several police in the area who did nothing until after these murderers left. Police came in immediately and started arresting people who were trying to help those who had fallen. Nelson Johnson, was taken into custody, kicked in the head by the police. He was bleeding from the arm as he was trying to help people. And the police did this directly or indirectly. They set it up.
Images and sounds of the 1979 Greensboro massacre from the Jim Waters documentary, The Guns of November 3rd. Local pastors in Greensboro are now calling on the city council to issue an apology for the events that led to the 1979 murders.
And for those who aren't aware, those Klansmen and Nazis and there was an FBI informant amongst them, went to trial, nationally televised murders, nationally televised trial, and they were acquitted of the murders. Again, this seems to be a recurring theme. The right-wing terrorists do their dirt and often get away with it. I'm sorry, can you hear?
No, we've lost the sound again from the video.
Okay, well, let me just again try to narrate some. The Oklahoma City bombing was done by Timothy McVeigh, a white nationalist, a peddler of guns and Nazi paraphernalia. He was executed for this crime, but one of the most striking things was there were a lot of children killed and at a daycare center. And I recollect looking as they were pulling the children out. And it's not so evident here, although you can see some Black children. There are quite a few Black children who were killed and injured in the blast. But he was apparently unrepentant until the end for this act of terror, well embedded in the white nationalist community, and is seen as a hero to white nationalists and racist. This particular scene, and again, there's some context to this. The National Socialist Movement, a Nazi organization, came to Los Angeles. I said, you can barely tell the police from the National Socialist, the Nazis. They came, and during their the lead up to their demonstration at City Hall, they threatened to come to Chuco's Justice Center to shut down anti-Nazi organizing. And fortunately, members of the community came out and stood in front of Chuco's to defend it against these any attack. If they had the possibility of coming in, but if they came in, they were going to meet some kind of resistance. This particular event took place at 6th and Vernon. Hopefully the sound will come on so you can get the full effect.
I'm here to set you free, brothers. Motherfucking business while I'm in there. Hey, man, he did, bro. He ran over everybody. I'm telling you, rebuild this fucking shit, motherfucker, man. Ran into the wall right there. Look right behind you. This dude just ran right into the wall and almost hit me. Look at this shit.
This is 6th and Vernon, 2015. Man declared he was from the Ku Klux Klan, tried to fight people, and then used his vehicle to ram through the vehicle and try to hit pedestrians until he was pulled out.
This is the KKK. Shoot this nigga. And we are rich. This that nigga Domino. Shut up! Shut up! Hey. I said that's just the $5,770. He's up there. Shut up, man. Yo, Domino, I said take it. These niggas are bullying Donald Trump. I said take it. I'm gonna put your ass up. I can't see PD here.
again, in typical fashion, this time with a Black district attorney, Jackie Lacey. This happened in 2015, just before New Year's. The LAPD arrested him for attempted murder with hate crimes enhancements, and the district attorney declined to prosecute. After he attacked a group of youngsters who happened to be rolling 40 Crips, and they beat him away, he ran to firefighters and said, "Help me." And they said, "We're fighting a fire." And he said, "All you niggers stick together." Ran back, jumped in his truck, destroyed 3 or 4 cars, and again, tried to hit people on the sidewalk until they pulled him out. Can you hear anything?
No.
Okay, well, the Ku Klux Klan went to Alhambra. Of course, this is around within the last 5-6 years. The Klan and Nazis, they carry flags, and the flags are weapons, and they have spears at the end.
Mhm.
So this is why the young man had been stabbed in the stomach. Once again, they arrested both Klansmen and counter protesters, anti-racist protesters. Most of the people stabbed were counter protesters, and the Orange County District Attorney declined to prosecute. They did arrest, again, you see some of the victims laying around. They arrested, again, anti-Klan protesters. But the Klan members they arrested were all let go. Now, this is something that I've talked about in the past. Let's see if there's sound. No, I don't know what's going on with the sound. This is in Santa Monica. Now you see right here, this I think it has a metal ball at the end. So they were, there was a meeting of the Coalition for Racial Justice, or Committee for Racial Justice, and a collection of white supremacists, fascists, attempted to break into the meeting. They had come in before and disrupted the meeting the month before, and this time they invited me to help them try to figure out how to deal with them. I told them to put up signs, have people there to not let them in, because they said they were about 5 the month before. They came with about 50 and attempted to break into the meeting. And again, and for whatever reason, these Latinos, dark-skinned Latinos, see now that heavy metal ball at the end of that tripod or whatever it is, coalesced with these white supremacists. I guess they think that they're white. And I don't understand how they don't realize that they hate them, maybe not as much as they hate Black people, but they hate them just as much. They hate them thoroughly. So they were told they couldn't come in. And this guy with the straw hat is a so-called undercover police officer. this guy with the beard, he was arrested at January 6th. He was also at Charlottesville. But this police officer, when they were kept out of this door, and you'll see them in a second, he let them in later, and we had to fight at a second door. But you see the struggle to keep them out. Again, they're not afraid to use violence. And the odd thing is, if we had used weapons, I'm sure they would have used their weapons. They were prepared for violence. We were not. We were not prepared to use counter violence. And all the while they were protesting that the people inside attacked them. So finally, the police who did nothing the month before acted like they were doing something. You see this guy in the yellow? Remember his face. So that was the first round. And that's me with my cane trying to be helpful. But once we were inside, again, we had to fight to keep them out from the meeting. Again, they're more than willing to use violence while pretending to not to be victims themselves. One guy kept referring to the Black people as Australopithecines or whatever, like pre-human animals. Again, this guy in the white hat is a national fascist organizer. So here he stole the man's hat and he's mocking him. Soon after that, in Charlottesville, this happened the same month as Charlottesville. You see a white supremacist pull a gun and shoot at a Black protester. And this guy's trying to justify the murder of Heather Heyer, anti-racist protester at Charlottesville. He was convicted and is supposedly serving life now. This is Los Angeles. Maxine Waters' office, the Oath Keepers, who played a huge role in the January 6th insurrection. Apparently the LAPD told them that they weren't going to be protected. So they got doused with water, spit on, they had their flag stolen and burned. But it could have very well have turned out to be as dangerous as these other places. This is a meeting, after a meeting at the Cudahy City Council, and I don't know if you could see it right there. This guy pulled a gun on the anti-racist protesters in Cudahy. Now this is the explaining what had happened. And as you could, well, you'll see, the police stopped them. I don't know if they were ever prosecuted, but the protesters were surprised that this white supremacist pulled a gun on them. Again, without the knowledge, we could be putting ourselves in very deep jeopardy, our lives and the lives of the people around us. But there's a shot of this guy, and he's former police. See, there's his weapon, his belt, his weapons. He didn't think twice about pulling a weapon and pointing it at people. This is on Crenshaw, again, Nazis marking territory, just like gangbangers do. Threats to, it looks like threats to Panthers, but probably threats to Black people in general.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just kind of speed forward. Now this is a march in Phoenix, again, 3 blocks from where I used to live. I used to teach capoeira at this park. And they're marching up, these Nazis, talking about niggers, niggers, where are you?
Excuse me, James, what park is that?
East Lake Park.
Okay.
On Jefferson and 16th Street, what used to be a thoroughly Black community, but it's been basically Black people have been zoned out of it. But they felt comfortable enough to walk through. The narrator said that this did not make the news. It was early in the middle of the day, I guess in a hot part of the day, and they walked through. There were some Black people there who verbally challenged them, but again, they were prepared for violence. And this is last year, matter of fact, 2021. So they're going back and forth. But again, this violence, they're prepared for it. The people were not. And then we have the Buffalo mass shooting. And I have a very graphic, but I don't want to show that. Very graphic video of the murder, the massacre in Buffalo. But again, we have Buffalo, we have South Carolina, Charleston. These things happen over and over again. Again, pointing up the need, I think, for security culture. Even if it doesn't have to look like the Nation of Islam.
Right.
But I think we need to do something to make sure that we're safe. So, yeah. So this.
No, go ahead, James.
Huh?
No, go ahead. I was about to say something, but go ahead. I didn't know you weren't finished.
No, I was finished. I was about to go say something else, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask if there were any questions.
Yes, that's
for you. Yes. Or comments that folks would like to add. And you can, if you can, please use your raise hand feature, and that way, we can more easily take the question. And you can, of course, always put them in the chat. And Tasha, I see you have a question.
Yeah, you pointed out a few folk who have been seen at the national level at national level rallies or rallies in other parts of the nation, I should say. And then you pointed out the guy who was you said national level fascist organizer.
Yes.
How do you understand them to be operating in California? How do they show up in Santa Monica at a relatively small kind of community gathering? Is this a kind of reconnaissance for expanding their base, or are they already very developed affiliates here? If I'm making sense with my question. Mhm.
Yeah, from my understanding, they use social media, and just like the left uses social media, Black people use social media. They can get people there with a quickness. There are organizations. There's a group called the Red Elephants that appeared in Santa Monica. At the same time, there are those people who are affiliated as individuals. Now, that guy with the yellow shirt, the little short, chubby guy, he's a frontline soldier. He was in Santa Monica. Then he was interviewed outside of Maxine Waters' office. So and he was not speaking for the Oath Keepers, but he apparently had some kind of communication with them. So whether it's a general call out, y'all come, unite the right, or whether he actually knew them, I don't know. One of the Proud Boys who was at the Santa Monica event, again, I saw he was surveilling Juneteenth last year and showed up. And, I noticed in some of these videos, they were focusing on me. They thought I was Israeli. At least they asked that. Are you a Jew? You look Middle Eastern. It's like, man, please. But they showed up at Juneteenth. And I was trying to get my phone so I could take his picture. He saw me. I suppose he recognized me and left, made a U-turn, got the hell out of there. So how they communicate, I believe, mainly through social media. And they have both organizations in terms of perpetuating violence, but they have this lone wolf thing. So there are organizations, I forget the names of one of these main ones, that has committed several murders, and besides the skinheads, they have the lone wolves who go out and kill without an organization. And then that way they shouldn't drag other people into it. I just had a friend come back from Whidbey Island for a writing workshop. Whidbey Island is where the leader of the order that killed Black folks and Jews, neo-Nazi, well-known in Arizona, appeared on talk shows, but developed this order, the Silent Brotherhood, that committed numerous terrorist acts, don't like police. And now that's one thing. KKK equals police. There's this thing on the right wing. They don't like city police, which is why it was not surprising when they attacked police at the Capitol on January 6th. There's a contradiction. One of the videos I have that I didn't show was the assassinations of Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman. The police was truly the KKK equals the police. The sheriff's department has gangs, racist gangs in Los Angeles today. There are collaborations, but generally, because police sometimes investigate them and put them away for life, they don't like the police. They said they'd rather like the sheriffs, sheriff organizations, because they're more rural, or whatever the hell the rationale they come up with. But sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's Nazis equal police.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Sambista dancer.
Yeah, that's Trisha. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Trisha.
Yes, Trisha.
Okay. Hi, greetings.
Greetings.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick some background info on the Santa Monica group, because I used to go to their meetings, and the group started because of an incidents that happened with Black students at Santa Monica High School. And so it was primarily folks from the church in Ocean Park, which started, which is a social activist church. And then the Black parents that came together to deal with these incidents at Santa Monica. And so they've gotten a lot of media coverage with some of the stuff that they're doing. So it's not surprising then if you know, folks are looking at social media and the regular media and saying, oh, let's go over there and intimidate these people. And the other piece to that I just wanted to say is that there is so much anti-Blackness within the so-called Hispanic or Latino communities. And I experienced that firsthand when I was the publicist for a friend of mine who did an exhibit on the Black presence in Mexico. And we had folks coming in trying to disrupt the opening of this exhibition.
That was at the Crenshaw Baldwin Plaza, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's not surprising that these Latinos, you know, want to claim their whiteness. It's baked in. I say it's baked into the culture, and it's the Moorish effect.
Yes, that's absolutely
You know,
correct.
so I think that when we talk about these so-called Black and Brown alliances, we really need to call people on the carpet and say, you know, question them, because it's almost as if we cannot assume that they are allies. We need to call them out and feel them out and see exactly where they are, because a lot of them aren't.
Yeah, well, I think that whenever we have alliances, whether it's Black
Yes.
alliances, we have Negroes who follow Hitler. And to me, the Nazis are crazier than the Klan. They're more bloodthirsty, they're more cruel, they're more crazy, and like this National Socialist Liberation Party, National African Liberation Party, which may as well be National Socialist Liberation. They follow, you know, they study Hitler. I've heard people saying, well, to learn about nation building, you need to read Mein Kampf. All this fascination with Nazis and they weren't successful. Why the hell would you want to follow them? So we have to look wherever we go. And you see, like Gil Cedillo, I went to school with Gil Cedillo. He looks damn near like his skin complexion. This is a dark dude. How the hell are you gonna? And you know, I've been around violence, Black brown violence, damn near all my life. Well, since high school, there were Black brown riots, Black against brown, so-called. But then there was great love between Black and brown. And in Venice, Black brown gang wars in the 70s and in the 90s, two in the 90s, where dozens of casualties, injured and dead. Right. But then there was great love there also. So those, and then I hear people from Mexico talking about, oh, my grandmother was Spanish. It's like Negroes talking about,
Cherokee.
Yeah, my, oh, you know what I'm gonna say. Yeah, my grandmother was pure Cherokee or something. Yes. Yeah. They do the same thing. I said, if I had a dime, it's like, I would show me a damn picture of your grandmother from Spain. It doesn't exist. But you know, that talk of that whiteness, that slavish devotion to white supremacy. Don't call us Black. And they said LULAC in the 40s said we could solve discrimination against Mexican Americans. Just consider us white.
Just call us white, and we're all
call us white.
Exactly.
You ain't white. You got Mexicans calling other Mexicans, those short, dark, ugly people from
Right.
Oaxaca.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and you see those people there in Santa Monica. There are some dark ass people, some of them. How the hell are you aligning yourself with people who hate you, consider you inferior, and consider you a mud person?
A mud person, exactly.
Yes,
You are
the mud races, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
mongrels, they say.
yeah. So how does this work? So yeah, definitely we got to look at alliances, but we got to look at alliances all around.
Mm-hmm.
And again, stop hooking up with Black people, even though they believe that Hitler had a good idea, or torture Black people because that's the way that's the thing to do because I can, or steal from Black people. That's a whole nother subject. But in terms of terrorism, we have like the Mexican mafia used to be run by a white dude, Peg Leg Morgan. How did that happen? Some slavish devotion to white supremacy. And then you have them aligning with the Aryan Brotherhood. On the other hand, the Black guerrilla family used to align itself with Nuestra Familia, the Northerners. So yeah, that was a good alliance. But apparently, or at least up until the cessation of hostilities, the Black folks and the brown folks, the Black guerrilla family and the Mexican mafia were at odds, murdering each other, and that spilled out onto the streets. And they were able to work it out. So now, even when silly, immature Negroes attack these little immigrants selling elotes on the street, they don't start killing, because there has been a cessation of hostilities. And they have become more nationalist in terms of separating themselves from this whole idea that I'm Mexican, so I'm white, and my grandmother's from Spain. That old nonsense.
James.
I hope this doesn't get out too much. Talking bad about my people.
So I was thinking about you were talking about the last Juneteenth event, right? And somebody was there gathering intelligence. And I was thinking about that with the recent what was it? The thing on Crenshaw.
Taste of Soul.
Taste of Soul. Yeah, exactly. What is our ability to monitor them and know if they're going to attack a mass event like that, where there are going to be so many Black people probably unprepared?
Yeah. Well, that's a subject that should be held off the record.
Okay.
I think, again, developing security culture. We have like at Lamert, I think it's almost like waiting for the earthquake, the big one. It's gonna come, but who knows when. And anytime there's an event, and whether it's at Lamert Park on Sundays, a Taste of Soul, some other event where there's going to be lots of Black folks, I anticipate at some point somebody's going to do some kind of attack, and it might be a lone wolf attack, or some silly people like, some oath keepers who didn't have enough sense to leave, because most of the oath keepers left, and then that one truck came. This it's hard to tell, but I think the strongest defense, like Hakeem Madhubuti said, the best defense for your position is your practicing it. You have to practice defense. If we don't practice it, if we leave it in the hands of the police, like the protesters in Greensboro, like the Committee for Racial Justice in Santa Monica, because the police did absolutely nothing. And they said it was free speech and they couldn't stop them. I said, to hell with that. You keep them out where we can. It's a public park. Would you let a known child molester into a party for a bunch of kids if it was held at the park. Does that mean that they can just go wherever they want? No. And so racists can't come into an anti-racist meeting and disrupt it.
Mhm.
So yeah, the idea that we need to depend on people who have proven themselves to be enemies or disinterested at best, I think is a fallacy that we need to overcome, way past due overcoming. But we need to develop a culture of security. And again, it doesn't have to be like the Nation of Islam where you have to get patted down every time, everywhere, stomp your feet, put your hands up, empty your pockets, like at the airport. But there needs to be something. There needs to be something. And that's something that, whether it's a church, even a hair salon, just for common criminals, man walks into a hair salon, has all the hairdressers kneel on the floor and then shoots them in the head one by one. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Keep the door locked. Why do you want to come in? No, you just can't come in. And there's been progress in some areas, some ways, but we got a long way to go.
Do we have some more questions for James?
I had a question. Are you talking about this past Juneteenth in Santa Monica?
No, not Juneteenth in Santa Monica, Juneteenth in Leimert Park in 2021.
21, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
this
guy. No, go ahead.
No, because I was at the Juneteenth in Santa Monica, this last one.
Uh-huh.
There were a lot of people, a lot of others other than Black people there too. So they got a really good turnout.
Good.
I mean, I think we should probably make that assumption at any of our events that intelligence is being gathered, by the militant white right.
Yeah, and especially after this, for some people, shocking defeat in the midterms. Even though they may get the House of Representatives, it looks like they might lose the Senate, and they've lost the presidency, and their boy is walking away in shame. And that's when people tend to strike. Right? They struck January 6th. They struck in Charlottesville when they were taking down statues. They lose something, they're losing their privilege, they're losing their status. It won't be surprising again. I think an attack in Los Angeles is overdue. Remember, they were going to attack the first AME.
Yes.
And the FBI came in and arrested the wannabe perpetrators. But at at another time, I think it was either in the late 90s or the early the early 2000s, there was some kind of fascist Nazi march, and they were coming from all over, and while passing through, I think, like near Pomona, I can't remember the exact city, they stabbed up a Black man on their way to this protest.
Right, I remember that news, yes.
Yeah. The telephone worker in Fontana, the Ku Klux Klan, they kept raising their head, and then finally they shot a lineman for Pacific Bell while he was on the telephone pole and paralyzed him. We just don't know. It's just that they've gained some sophistication, and we see these mass killings for no reason, but they have a reason. They don't like us, and they see us as a threat. They see their power diminishing, mainly because Black people have organized.
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to bring something up too about, I was talking about there's a lot of slander going on regarding our Black scholars.
Mhm.
And I was supposed to go to Egypt, to Kemet back in February. And turns out the trip ended up being canceled. And we were going to have a conference there in Aswan. And unfortunately, the whole trip and the conference had to be canceled. And folks like Anthony Browder and some of the other Black scholars actually got death threats. And this is coming from these crazy Arabs, some of them in Egypt. And one of them, it turns out, we did some investigation, actually worked for Facebook. So I see a lot of coalition building going on with these anti-Black folks on several levels. So you've got the anti-Black folks in Egypt that sometimes are coalescing with these anti-Black Latinos, and no telling who else that they are uniting with So I think there's on so many levels, we are under attack. And I just wanted to bring that out as well. That our itinerary was on the website. And so they knew exactly where we were going to be. So there was some folks that ended up going, but they had to change their whole itinerary because those folks knew exactly where they were going to be because it was online.
Yeah, and one of the most ridiculous ideas propagated by some is that Egypt is not in Africa.
Exactly.
I mean, how crazy is that?
And well, their whole thing is, oh, you Black Americans, you're West African, you don't have anything to do with North Africa. So they're trying to rewrite the history, just like the folks are banning and burning books over here. It's happening over there as well.
Oh yeah. But and I think a lot of that, I think not that it's going to solve it, but to have the research behind you, or to support your position. So when they start talking crazy, you can at least turn them to, it's like, no, that's not entirely true. Where does that, you get, the word, who built the pyramids? Where did Egyptian culture come from?
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Denise Neal. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Can you hear us?
Oh, good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I have a lot to say, but I didn't think I could be heard. And I just I agree with a lot of what's being said, but I, by blood, am Black Cherokee. Cherokee enslaved my family, and I felt offended when that Cherokee comment was made. Just to let you know, I'm working hard here in LA. I'm in Culver City, and I'm trying to support everything going on here. But yeah, I'm actually a Black Cherokee by blood, and it's been proven. And there are lots of us, and a lot of us don't even know. We need to all get tested, especially with this reparations thing. It's real. And yes, my mother had a Jewish blood factor, so she's got Hebrew too. It's real. It's not a joke. You guys need to look into it.
No, you misunderstood my comment. I said there are a lot of Black people who claim Cherokee when they have no Cherokee blood. I'm well aware that my mother used to say there was a native man used to come to the house and play piano. We had an old Indian blanket. She claimed Cherokee. I don't know. I had a DNA test. It doesn't show. But Cherokees were also known to be slaveholders, slave catchers.
Yes, they were.
Yes.
And they raped women that were enslaved, and that's what happened in my family. And there was no way to map out that genome, so that Cherokee blood tested as Chinese. But they found Scottish heritage. which is what connected us to the tribe. So yeah, there's no 100% pure Black FBA in every single person. Most of us are mixed because we were raped, and that's the sad part of our history. But it's there, and the men carry most of the information. So I would greatly encourage you all to do the test, because we need those tests anyway for reparations.
Yes, and my father's family, and we traced it back to the Cheronaka, that to this day still has Black people in the tribe in high positions.
Yes.
But the Cherokee apparently threw out a bunch of Black people recently, within the last several years. So
we fought 14 years and won. So the genetic testing, and we're still working on getting our land back. There are 3 casinos on my family's land that was stolen. So
Denise, can I ask you a question, Denise?
Yes.
Did James respond to your concern?
Somewhat, but it's just that I get this a lot from people here in LA, and people elsewhere. They laugh at me. Even non-FBA Blacks laugh at me in my face when I tell them that I've got documented history, and my grandfather was passing for Black. He looked like Nat King Cole, but after he died, we found he had a tribal card.
Well, I think the important thing there is that whoever laughs, you have the documentation, so it doesn't matter. And I also, I think an important aspect of the point James was making, again, is all the many Black people who don't have Cherokee or otherwise, right? Because Cherokee is only one First Nation, in the Americas. My family has also had that DNA, our DNA checked, and they found no Native American genetic material, though we know our great grandfather lived on the Choctaw reservation, right? And we also know that many African Americans were enrolled into tribes without any genetic mixing, whether consensual or without consent, right? So I think another important thing to remember, though, is the Cherokee and all the other First Nations have also been victims of the type of white terrorism we're talking about, including what we might call spiritual terrorism, right? The imposition of the values of whiteness and the notion of Western civilization as the height of civilization. So there are all these kinds of versions, right? And as we, there are arguments among First Nations people about blood quantum, right? And how much white blood, et cetera, right? So
which is very strange,
at the root of it all is the militant white supremacy.
Exactly.
Right. So, and we're coming to the end of our evening also, though. We're actually 25 minutes over, but it was worth going over.
It was worth it.
Yes, it was. I agree.
How do we stay in touch?
Well, how did you find out about this?
I was sent an Eventbrite invite.
Okay, so you're going to get the next one. If you got this one, you should get the next one. And of course, if you want to share contact information, you can put it in the chat. And if you don't want to make it public, you can make it a direct chat, a direct message to me or Tasha. We can keep your information, or James. That's up to you how public you want that email to be. This is the first part of a 3-part conversation on this topic. We're picking it back up Thursday, Thursday evening. Are we meeting at our usual time on Thursday? Which would be 7 Pacific time. So for those of you outside of the Pacific time zone, you can adjust your time. 7 on Thursday, I mean, that's our normal, right? Okay, so we will pick it up on Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Pacific time, part 2 of this conversation with James, where we will, I think this was such a great opening, right? And in some ways, it was the opening that we originally imagined looking at the contemporary before we go into the history that brings us to this moment. And so we'll pick up with that history on Thursday, a little more on that mercenary terrorism, according to James's, outline, right? The mercenary terrorism, the Reconstruction, white terrorism, and then the post-Reconstruction white terrorism, and get some of some little more details of some of the broad strokes that we got today as James was giving us that history.
Yeah, and I'll try to stick to the script next time.
You did great. And
You
the
did a
video,
good job.
I'm so glad you shared that video, right? Those
Yes.
videos.
Yes.
Can we get links to the video? I couldn't see them.
No, I was trying to get it so I could post it on YouTube. Hopefully that'll be done by Thursday.
Yeah, so maybe by Thursday. Great. Yes. Yeah, you did.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
Tricia,
Okay.
you did good, James. That's right. It was.
What's that?
Considering the short time, you did really well. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us, Denise, and everyone
Yes.
else who joined us. Tasha,
Can
you have anything you want to say?
Not so much, but Sister Denise, we've met around Culver City. That's how
Yes.
you're
I
right.
knew it was you, Tasha. I knew it was you.
Some time ago. That's how I grabbed
Yes.
your email address. It was a long time, and
Oh, girl, it was a long
glad
time ago.
that you decided to come. This is great. Really
Yes.
wonderful to have you join.
And now the train goes by the center
Welcome.
over there, so it'll be easier to get there if you have any in-person meetings. But I'm still in Culver, though. I'm still here.
Great, great.
Good.
So welcome.
We'll
Welcome
get
the
back to
conversation.
in-person meetings, and
Yeah.
especially when we can figure out how we can do the in-person and live stream them, and at the same time, so we can continue to
Yeah.
reach our out-of-state folks.
So
Mhm.
James, do you have any closing comments for tonight?
No, but I promise to try to stick to the script next time.
All right. Well, and we'll do better to help you stay on script, because I was very happy to let you go off script out, so I'll own that too. Right. So I'm so happy to know now that Kwame and family, y'all are in Dago,
Wow.
right down the highway. Shoot, we need to take a trip, Tasha.
I think so.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
need to
that
go,
would be
come
great.
bearing gifts.
Come on down. You have an open invitation.
All right. Awesome. Well, folks, that is Joko for tonight. Again, Thursday, 7 p.m. Pacific. If you're watching on YouTube, Joko channel on YouTube, and we will be live on Zoom with James Simmons again.
All right, y'all.
Okay, thank you.